All right, let's get into it. This episode is all about KPIs. Everybody has them, nobody agrees on them, and at least half of us are quietly ignoring them.
Half? That feels generous. I think a lot of people are actively working around them.
Okay, strong start. So you're anti KPI?
I'm anti-bad KPIs, which tends to be most of them. I've seen way too many metrics that look good on paper but don't actually reflect the work.
Okay, like what?
Volume-based stuff for one, how many filings did you process? Cool. But did we catch issues? Did we prevent problems? Did anything actually get better?
Right, but isn't that more of a how you use them problem than a KPI problem? Because without some kind of measurement, you're just hoping things are working.
I don't think it's that simple. The second you measure something, people optimize for it. And sometimes that means cutting corners just to hit the number.
Okay, that's fair, but I'd argue that's exactly why you need good KPIs. If you're measuring the right things like accuracy, time, and quality checks, you can actually improve processes.
In theory, in practice, I've seen teams spend more time tracking the work than doing the work.
Okay, but let me push back on that because when KPIs are actually working, they're not just about oversight. They help you spot bottlenecks, justify headcount, and actually explain what your team does to the rest of the business.
Okay, I'll give you that. Being able to say, here's the workload, here's the trend, here's why we need help, that's useful.
Exactly, especially in trademark teams where a lot of the work is invisible unless something goes wrong.
Yeah, no one notices when everything runs smoothly, only when a deadline gets missed.
Right, and KPIs can help show all the non-disasters you're preventing.
But only if they're designed well. Because I've also seen KPIs used as a blunt instrument, like, why didn't you hit this number without any context?
Totally. And that's where they can be backfire if they're used to judge instead of understand.
Exactly. If KPIs become a scoreboard instead of a diagnostic tool, people start gaming them or just disengaging.
Okay, so maybe the real issue isn't KPIs themselves, it's whether they're being used as a tool or a target.
Yeah, I think that's right. Good KPIs should help you ask better questions, not just give you a number to chase.
I like that. So maybe the takeaway is KPIs aren't inherently good or bad. They're only as useful as the thinking behind them.
And the way leadership uses them.
Always that part. Welcome to the TMA Talk Show. The TMA Talk Show will take you into the heart of the TMA community, highlighting the trademark administrators as a force to be reckoned with within the intellectual property landscape. Hosted by yours truly, Emily Quackenbush, along with several surprise guest hosts. The TMA Talk Show will focus on the IP community, collaboration, and the unique contributions of each episode's special guests. This is the TMA Talk Show. Because while the rest of the world is busy building, marketing, and launching, the trademark administrator is quietly, or not so quietly, making sure you still own the name you're so proud of. Oh, and hey, of course, this goes without saying, but All Legal is a legal tech company and not a law firm. Nothing here in this episode should be considered legal advice, and this presentation expressed the views of our speakers and not necessarily those of Alt Legal, the TMAE, or the views of the hosts. Welcome back to the TMA Talk Show, where we spotlight the voices shaping the TMA community. Today's episode is all about something that tends to spark strong opinions, KPIs, and what they really mean to measure success for trademark teams. Some teams swear by KPIs as a way to demonstrate value and drive smarter decisions. Others, not so much. Even within our own teams, there's a bit of a divide on whether they're helpful, frustrating, or just another thing to manage. So today, we're digging into both sides of that conversation, what KPIs can do for your organization, for you as a TMA, and where they might fall short. At a basic level, KPIs, or key performance indicators, are ways to measure performance. What that actually looks like in practice can vary widely depending on the team, goals, and resources. And we're especially excited about this conversation because our guests explored this exact topic at last year's TMAE Summit. First, we're thrilled to welcome Katie Horn. Katie is an IP operations analyst at Qualcomm and previously spent over a decade at Thermo Fisher Scientific managing trademark portfolios and IP operations. Her work spans over everything from budgeting and forecasting to building business processes and using tools like Power BI to actually visualize and communicate metrics. Katie, we're so glad you're here.
Thanks so much.
And joining her is Kristen Koines, Senior Practice Group Liaison and Senior Manager of Trademark Administration at Arent Fox Schiff. Kristen has spent nearly 2 decades leading trademark administration within her firm, building and scaling operations while working closely across teams to support broader organizational goals. Kristen, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
All right, let's warm up with some rapid fire. First thing that comes to mind. Kristen, describe your working style in one word.
Efficient.
All right. Katie, how about you?
I'm going to say logical.
Okay, logical. Katie, what is one skill you use every day that people wouldn't expect?
At work, I'm a different being than outside of work. So I think my organizational skills at work, and I put them to use every day. I think people outside of the work, my life might not be as organized. So I do, I'm very organized and I need to be in the office.
Yeah, 2 different characters, I take it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty common for a lot of us, right? We function differently. And Kristen, how about you?
I would say algebra, which as a TMA and a manager at a firm, I didn't expect that I would have to be doing percentages and calculations all day long, but I do.
Yeah, interesting. I dislike algebra, so good job. Structure or flexibility, Kristen?
Definitely structure.
And Katie, how about you?
I would say structure too. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'm with that. I like structure. And speaking about like 2 different characters within work or home, I think I tend to be a little flexible at home, I think, except when it comes to my kids, maybe. All right, an early bird or night owl, Katie?
So I used to be a night owl, and then I think now the older that I get, I'm turning into an early bird. I just can't do the late nights anymore. Can't do it.
How about you, Kristen?
I'm an early bird and I've always been an early bird. I'm a lap swimmer and you got to get to the pool at 5 a.m. So when people see me sending emails at 4:30, they're like, what are you doing up? I like check my email over coffee.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, thank you. Just saying. What's something about your current role that would surprise your younger self? Kristen.
That I'm a manager. I started out as a translator. I moved to paralegal and now I'm a manager, and that's not something that I envisioned for myself.
Interesting. Translator. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I started as a Russian to English translator at a law firm, which is how I came into working at law firms.
Wow.
And then
super
honestly,
cool.
I saw the paralegal group and I was like, why am I not in that group? They're much happier.
Interesting. Wow, that's so neat. Very cool. Katie, how about you?
So I feel like I've gone full circle. When I applied for college, I was in the freshman engineering program, and now I'm back in IP with an engineering company. So I think that coming full circle, I wasn't expecting that.
Wow, interesting.
Mhm.
And last one, what's your go-to productivity tool?
I use Planner in Teams. It keeps
Planner
me,
and Teams.
it helps me keep everything in track. And is it on my plate, or am I waiting for someone else to complete it? So I love using the planner.
Very cool. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's neat. Yeah. How about you, Kristen?
I've recently discovered Copilot, and Copilot within Excel is just a game changer. I don't know why they can more succinctly give you the formulas, but they can, and it's just great. So formulas I didn't know I needed, I can quickly do, and it reduces busy work.
Awesome. All right, let's start with the big picture. You both spoke about KPIs at the TMAE Summit last year. And when you think about KPIs in the context of trademark teams, what role do they actually play? Katie, you want to enlighten us with that?
I think in any team, you want to see, who's doing what. And I think the KPIs really let you see how the team is progressing, how the team is performing. And I think that that's one of the main benefits of using KPIs. You become aware of things that you wouldn't normally have been until you start keeping track of things. So if you're not measuring anything, your practice could be all over the place. But once you start actually measuring, and you're measuring ability, you're measuring performance, you're measuring the prosecution on a daily basis. So I think if certain indicators aren't in place, you could just be doing the same thing over and over again without being able to measure any of the activity or any performance. So I think that that's a crucial piece of it.
May I ask, what are some of the things that you have become aware of that you weren't aware of before, off the top of your head?
It will help you, it will uncover, workload differences. So someone could have, a smaller portfolio and they could be, not sending, not getting as many office actions or then compared to someone else. So it really depends, and it depends on the data that you are measuring, but you could find something. And what I said earlier, it uncovers things that you might not would have found out until you start, measuring.
And it's not always easy just to run a report and say, oh, this person's got a mature portfolio by counting actual registered marks or, mature marks and running a report on pending applications. It's not that simple, is it?
Right. It's not that simple because it's so for the KPIs, the indicators, you're really seeing how you're getting or achieving a certain goal. So if you said, okay, I'm gonna just say you wanted to measure, if you're just measuring volume, that's a good data point to have, but it's not necessarily painting the whole picture. And I think that that's what the KPIs do. They help you paint the picture of the effort of the team and the performance of the team and the results.
Yep, exactly. It's how you get there and how long it took to get there,
Mhm.
which equals volume of work for each individual.
Right.
Yep, exactly. Kristen, how about you?
Well, I'd like to touch on something Katie said. It can reveal things and it gives you the ability to take different pieces. So to her point, it's not just the size of the portfolio, it's how many times did you touch something within that portfolio. So how many renewals were filed, how many maintenance, how many extensions. So you can extract that data from your docketing database, for example, and then you can say, okay, well, this person might have 5,000 cases on their docket, but they only made 100 filings in whatever time frame. Whereas this person has fewer, but it's a very active portfolio, how many new applications and so on. So I would say from that perspective, it does reveal those kind of things because it can be misleading to say, oh, I have 10,000 cases on my docket, but how many did you touch? It's different.
Right.
From a law firm perspective, it varies on which department I'm looking at. So for the paralegals, I do use it in the way just discussed. For the secretary team, it's a similar thing. How many conflicts did you submit? How many pro formas do you look at a month? And again, you can work for a partner that makes a lot of money, but for example, litigation, that's just one pro forma a month, maybe. It's not, the hundreds that the trademark secretaries see. And from a docketing perspective, it helps to staff make expectations of how many items they'll update on a daily basis. And again, you can get granular. It doesn't make sense to just say, I want each of you to do 20 items from the docket box a day. Is one of them TTAB? Is one of them an assignment that has 50 records attached to it? That's a different story than I touched one email. I touched one email that caused me to touch 50 cases. That's a different story.
Also, it has a lot to do with, I think, the level of expertise. You can have a junior paralegal filing, let's say, a statement of use. It's going to take them longer than a more experienced paralegal to file a statement of use. So that is not a good indicator either. You can run billable hour reports every day if you wanted to, but it's going to take one person longer than the other. So, sometimes that's not a good judgment either, in my humble opinion. So.
No, I agree with you. You also have to look at skill set, and
right.
you have to consider that, and that also helps with staffing to look at when we're looking at reassigning portfolios. Well, this person's junior. This is a lot of U.S. cases. It'll give them good experience on assessments and such before we move them on to the more complicated portfolio.
That's right. Yeah, skill set, another indicator. So, okay, KPIs can be really valuable, but they can also be really frustrating. What's something about KPIs that you don't like or find challenging? Kristen.
So that false information, that false sense of I support this partner, or I work on this team that has X amount of work in theory, but how much of it are you actually doing? What does the monthly billing look like for you as a paralegal? How many cases do you have to make filings for versus somebody who might have something smaller in number, in raw number, but in what they're actually doing is greater. So it can be misleading. And I've certainly heard people from all walks within a law firm saying, well, I have this many cases on my docket. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are as busy as a person with fewer cases.
And I think you get a lot of those comments or false statements from other practice areas that are not in IP. They just don't quite understand what goes into getting from A to B to get a registration. There's a lot of stuff that happens in between. And so, when you look at one report versus another in a different area of law, there's a lot of, false indicators, if you will. So that happens a lot, I think.
Yeah, definitely at a general practice firm, they do wonder, why do we have so much overhead? But a lot goes into managing a trademark practice, and our docketing again is different. Right. As we all know, special. Docketing software. Yeah, we are. Our docketing software is, very niche, and you can't just have a great software company that says we're going to make docketing software. It doesn't tend to work out when you look at it in the industry.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Katie, how about you?
So when people think about KPIs, I think a lot of people just think of, just the scoreboard or, a dashboard with certain metrics and certain charts, but that's really just one piece of the KPIs. So I think it's the amount of work that goes into setting the KPIs and then actually monitoring the KPI, taking any corrective action, making sure that people are accountable, having regular cadence meetings. So I think it's the involvement of the process that might deter people from using them in their practice, because you have your, you're going to set your goal. You're going to say, okay, we want our success rate for responses to office actions to be 90%. So that would be a goal. And then your indicators, what you're measuring, each month, okay, did we make, how many responses did we file? Did we get a subsequent office action? So those data points mean something, but they don't mean something if you're not reviewing them at a regular cadence. So I think the whole process and really the workflow of using KPIs, it can be daunting and it can be a little, it is a very involved process. So I think maybe the time efforts and just actually setting the finding out what the goal is. Okay, then which indicators are applicable for you to reach that goal. And then, okay, then setting the cadence, having the regular meetings. So I think it's the whole involvement of the workflow. It's not just, oh yeah, we made our goal, we're great, go team. It's okay, let's look at the data. What is it showing us? What is the story that it's painting? So I think it's a little more involved, and I think that's why people might shy away from it.
I agree. I also think one misunderstanding is that one might think KPIs are not flexible. I think that's a huge misunderstanding. And that I have a thought on that. Would you actually involve your groups in creating these KPIs? Why not ask your group? Who's involved? Who's actually doing the work? Who is doing the work on these portfolios? Your paralegals, your TMAs, your project line managers, whoever they may be. Are they involved in the process in creating these KPIs? Are the people creating the KPIs, do they know what the work is? Do they know these product lines? Do they know the area of law? That's one question that might be presented. Also, are they revisited? Are the KPIs revisited every quarter? Did you lose some clients? Did you gain some clients? Are those numbers going to go up and down? That's one thing also to consider.
And to your point of, the KPIs not being flexible, that's another, piece of the workflow. If you've set a KPI that is inachievable, that's not gonna, benefit the team. So I think really coming up with that goal and then being able to see, and another point that you brought up is getting the team involved in creating the KPIs, because you said they're the ones that are doing the work. They know more about the portfolio.
Right.
So, and they can see, okay, where, are we heading on the right path or the wrong path? And that's part of the, the work stream or the workflow of creating and maintaining the KPIs is, how did we set this KPI? Is it attainable, or are we already attaining it? And is it really not measuring our performance? Is it something, is it a data point that it's not beneficial, or we're doing the same thing, we're not changing the process? But I think having the flexibility of, okay, this KPI, maybe we change up this indicator, maybe this isn't something that is going to help us reach our goals. So I think being flexible with the KPIs and revisiting them on that quarterly or monthly cadence to make sure, because especially when you first start out, like, your first quarter, you might not, the leading indicators or the qualitative indicators that you thought were going to help you measure it might not. So there might be some adjusting.
That's right. And if they are involved, those who are helping to try to meet these goals, they'll feel more responsible. They'll feel accountable because they had something to do with creating this goal kind of for themselves, right? I'm curious, for both of you, have either of you had any pushback or comments with any of the goals and KPIs that you created? And do they even know that you're involved in creating these?
My team definitely knows I was going to add that, and Katie brought it up. I think it's very important for the team to be involved so that I like to tell them, I don't like it to be a full democracy. I like to give them, this is what the goal is. This is the problem we're trying to solve. And so here are my ideas. And then what do you think? And let's talk through it. So I definitely want their feedback, but I don't think it's going to be a constructive conversation if I throw out to 25 trademark paralegals, what do you think it should be? And the person who does TTAB is going to have a different opinion from the one who does copyright and trademark and so on. So I do like to give it some structure, but I think in order for them to have buy-in, and that's why this is the goal. So, the firm says we have too much overtime. So let's talk about, why is there overtime? Do you all want to not work any overtime? Should we hire somebody else? Whatever it is, so that they have buy-in as to why we're doing it, we all have to, at a law firm or any company, you have to show that you have a value for your salary. And so I want them to be involved to see why we're doing it. It's to help them ultimately to show, well, okay, yeah, our department does have more overhead, but look how much revenue we bring in. Look at all of the clients we have. Look at all this new work we brought in. And so to help them understand what the value of it is, it's very important for them, I think, to have a say in it.
Right, absolutely. And the structures are different in a law firm environment than they would be probably in an in-house legal perspective, environment. Katie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in the corporate environment, you're also dealing with other teams. So there could be, like, you could have a if you're in a trademark team and if you're dealing with, people in brand or people, you're dealing with your outside counsel on a daily basis, you're dealing with your foreign associates, you're dealing with your internal attorneys. I think it's good to set those KPIs so they know. And I think the more that you message or socialize that these are the KPI, this is the goal that you're trying to meet, I think the more buyback you're going to get from, say, your managers or for the people that you're, because ideally you're setting these goals, you're using these KPIs to reach a goal and to let everyone know, hey, we reached this goal, and you're doing this for your for your recognition. You want to be recognized, and you want everyone to see how your team is operating and how efficient it is, and you're setting these goals, you're making these goals, and if you're doing it using the KPIs, you have your data points, you have your surveys, you have your feedback. So it's not, you're getting the data from outside, not really from inside. So it's not, you could just keep chugging away and filing, say your team files 500 trademark applications a year. Okay, you could do that year after year, but you're really not showing the success, the effort, the impact that you're having on the company. You're not really visualizing that. You're saying, okay, we filed 500 applications this year. Okay, well, was that your goal? Was that something that you achieved, or is this, you just do this every year? So I think setting the data points, using the data points to measure, I think it helps everyone that's not in your team see how your team is performing as well.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not just a clerical thing. You're not just, filing everything just to make a number, make up a number and say, hey, look what I did. Absolutely. Okay. And on the flip side, when KPIs are working well, what do they actually unlock for the team? You want to continue with that one, Katie?
So they unlock, I would say, the potential. They would unlock how the team is working cohesively. So, and I think I touched earlier on, for KPIs, you have your quantitative KPIs, you have, things that you're measuring, but there's also the qualitative. There's the general morale of the team. How do you measure that? There are ways to measure that, attendance, how many people, are calling out, the morale of the company, how many people are attending, if you have an event, is there attendance? Are people, attending things? Are they collaborating with each other? What is the sense of the team? I think when we were in Chicago, one of the examples that we used was it was the Chicago Cubs. For a lot of people, in sports, they use these KPIs, on a daily basis. They have their scorecard, they have their statistics that they use, for each game. So I think it's so important that if you're not measuring it, what are you, you're just coming into the office and you're doing your thing, but you're not really measuring the impact that you have. And I think that that's what gets missed. It's the impact that your team is having on the company or, within a law firm. So I think that if you're not using KPIs, then I don't think it's beneficial for the team.
There have been sales goals since the beginning of the existence of companies, and that's why they have like presidents clubs and take their best salespeople on trips and what have you. So these have been around forever.
Mhm.
Kristen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say sales goals. I used to work in-house, and I remember during our orientation, the sales guys, I worked at Choice Hotels, and the sales team did their pitch, and the head of sales said, "We are pure profit." And I remember thinking to myself, I'm pure expense, I'm legal. And so I think for us, we are in-house, we are an expense. And even at a law firm, we are so complicated in what we do that differs from other departments that we do. KPIs enable us to show our value. So when I was in-house, one of the things we did was not just how many applications that did we file, but how many were registered or pending. Basically, we didn't abandon. We didn't change our mind. We said, we want this to be the new breakfast at this brand, and we went with it and we kept it. And 2 years later, we still had it. There had been a tendency to just file for everything. Let's name everything in the hotel. And so we kind of got away from that. Like, let's do some maybe right to use stuff, things like that, that we could show a value. So we mitigated the potential liability. We made sure we weren't going to infringe on somebody else, but we said, do we really need to name everything in an Econo Lodge? No, we don't. So I think that, as you know, regardless of whether you're in-house or at a law firm, we across the board IP, no, let's not limit us to patents as well, cost more than a litigator can just have their LexisNexis and a computer. We have to have a lot more things than that.
Yeah, definitely. And for TMAs who are trying to figure out where to start, what's one KPI or type of metric that you think is actually useful to track? Kristen, we'll go with you first.
I think that productivity wise, so if I'm a TMA, I think the number of filings that I've made, whether it's new applications, searches, we're big on tracking searches here, extensions, renewals. I think that that's very important to show the volume of work that we've done. It's obviously customer satisfaction is big. It's not really in the US, I don't think, tracked at firms. So we can't really do that piece of it. Sure, I forward things when a client says, "Thank you so much, we're so glad to have this." But so I think it's more important for us, what is tangible is to track the things that we have done. And from that, you can say, well, they must be happy with us because they continue to work.
Yes, absolutely. And Katie, how about you?
I think based on the life cycle of prosecution, so I think the success rate, and not in getting the trademark application, but how many searches were conducted for this trademark application? How many you filed the application? What is the step, like, did it get registered? So I like the metric of from ideation to registration. How, how many applications did we search and then actually file? And then how many of those proceeded to registration? Because the volume of work that goes into the searching, I mean, you can, I know we're all familiar with, search projects. You could have one search project and you could be searching 30 candidates more. So if you're searching 30 candidates for that one trademark, you've searched 30, and then you're only going to file, one application. So what's that ratio? And then how long did that application take to get registered? So I think it shows the it shows, and it'll disclose the workload. So we created a visual, and it was like a funnel. So it was, okay, these are the numbers of searches that were conducted. these were this was the application that was filed, and then was it actually filed or not? And then was it registered? So you go from, okay, we did 30 searches, and of those, we selected 3 trademarks, we filed on those, and then 1 proceeded to registration. So that's it shows a lot of the detail of the work and how much work went into just getting that registration.
I love that. Is that a diagram that you share with whoever needs to see it that you can show? I mean, that's just in itself is a great visual to show what actually goes into how to obtain a registration.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's
Very cool.
It's a very involved process, and I think different teams differ on, okay, searching, and then, okay, are they going to file just some practices just file 1 trademark per product, some file 3 or more, depending on if they think they're going to get a refusal or an objection. But I think it can show you the amount of work that goes in to getting that registration.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great.
And I use the funnel chart, the funnel visualization on Power BI to do that.
Awesome. Awesome. So how do you balance measuring productivity with capturing the more qualitative parts of the role? Things like judgment, risk assessment, or relationship management. Katie, what are your thoughts on that?
So qualitative indicators are one of the more elusive data points that you can get. And there are a number of different ways. I think surveys, if you send a survey to a team, or even if you use a quick poll, and you can use a quick poll in Outlook, you can use them in Teams. If you just want to get just a sense of the nature of, how is the team feeling? Are they, meeting their attendance goals? Are they meeting the goals, other goals that they've already set for themselves? And I think you get a sense of the team cohesion. I think attendance is a good thing for productivity. If people are having trouble, getting to the office, or, actually, being at work, that might be something that, they're handling outside the office. So I think any little touch points that you can have with your team to get some feedback from them. And it is the feedback that's really important. And the feedback, if you get, if one of your team members is struggling, that feedback will help you adjust, let them take care of what they need to, and then you can adjust the workflow, the assignments. But I think, this qualitative metric is kind of elusive, because it's really giving you a sense of emotion, or a feeling. So again, with the baseball example, team cohesion, are the pitchers getting along with the outfielders? You can see this, you can see it, you can measure, people's body language, and you can see, are they getting along? And I think the qualitative is probably the most difficult to measure. But I think it's more intuitive, and there are ways to measure it. Like I said, the surveys and the polls, just checking in with the team members. I think that's a good way, to make sure that everybody's, has a chance to, let if there's something going on. But I think touch points are a really good way to get that feedback, from the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a human side to this, believe it or not. It's not all numbers and percentages and, revenue and all that good stuff.
You could be making, you could be, making these KPIs, but if the team morale is low, that's, I think, a more impact for the practice, and, for the company, and for the organization. You really want to make sure that the qualitative is matching the quantitative. You don't want people to turn into robots. Okay, we're making our goals, and we're meeting our indicators, but the morale is falling off, and there's no team cohesion. They don't even talk to each other. You don't want that type of environment. You want it to be more collaborative.
That's right. And I think that's often forgotten in a law firm environment sometimes. There is a people skill, believe it or not.
Yeah.
There is a people skill with attorneys. You have to learn, you know. So, Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with check-ins, and I like to do them from top to bottom. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have a monthly meeting with the partner who is the practice group leader of our department, just to get his feeling on things, to update him on things, to update him on morale. So feedback I've gotten from the paralegals, from the secretaries, let them know what are the things that people are happy about, what are the things that people are upset about, and also being completely transparent. This issue happened and this was how we resolved it, but just so that you're aware, this person wasn't happy with that, whether it's the partner who wasn't happy about something or a staff member who wasn't happy with the new tasks that they were given. And I definitely agree with the morale. You have to keep up the morale. We do like to think that we are a fun firm here. And I do involve my people at all levels. Again, the coordinator in New York will say, hey, I have some extra tickets for, whatever we're doing. And so do you have anybody you want to invite? So I'll have people do that. When I have new hires starting in office, if I'm not there on their first day, I have another team member from within my department. So I'll have someone from docketing take out a secretary or vice versa, because they're going to see the person in secretarial services or paralegal services all the time. I want them to meet other people within the department that they're going to be working with. And, we continue to do that. So when I visit the offices, we just, go get a coffee or whatever. And I'll say, okay, my team, let's go do this thing. So I think it is important to keep them happy. And then also, so I'm aware of that, but we do, as managers, we have a metric, and that's, how many people stay. So, I do like to point out the longevity, and I am privy to, who the comings and goings also within the full department. So I'll say, well, Patton had this much turnover and we had that much turnover, that's less or whatever. So when it's positive and to my benefit, certainly I do point that out as well, that, hey, we do have a happy group. And also, I think it's very important to be transparent with the team about, a doctor may not be a doctor forever. Like, we're living in different times. To make them fully aware, I support you in your career. So be transparent with me. I will help you apply for a project assistant job, or I will within the firm. I want to keep a quality person. If they have outgrown a position, there are positions within the firm, and I think the whole firm, it benefits the firm to keep a quality person at the firm, even if I lose a great member of my specific team. To have them go into another department, it's still a win for the firm. And I have to recognize that as a manager, that it's the overall success of the firm, not just my department.
Yeah, that's so lovely. See, these are some of the KPIs that are not often recognized. So they're, they can be lovely too. They're not just, measurements that are negative in any way. Transparency is huge. It's almost like help me help you. And also, if you don't tell me what you need or what I've done wrong, I will never know. So that's amazing. I love that. So have you seen KPIs used in ways that don't work, either measuring the wrong things or creating wrong incentives? Kristen, we'll start with you.
Yes, I've definitely seen when a goal is set for, say, number of emails docketed. If the bar was set too high or consideration wasn't taken into the type of case it was updating, then we have found people to get sloppy because they're more focused on, I have to get to this goal. It doesn't matter if it was done correctly. In a similar way, I've also seen when mistakes were docketed. I don't do that. There was a previous manager who did, and it just put the morale so far down. People were afraid to touch things, and they also treated like putting a deadline wrong the same with putting like a client's business unit or something. And yeah, we want the document to be 100% accurate, but we can all agree the deadline's the most important thing on there. And if you're going to get a demerit because you put an incorrect business unit, as treating it the same as an incorrect deadline, that's going to get people down. And it did cause people to just be afraid to docket anything because they were just constantly afraid, oh, I'm going to get something wrong and then I'm going to get this note that, oh, I had this many mistakes this week. So you definitely need to think about what is the importance of it, and you have to look at a larger picture of not just the number of items, but what types of items, and make it a realistic amount, and do the check-ins like we've talked about. Okay, we said we're going to do this many. Like we started an auto docketing software with a vendor where they do certain US PTO cases and case types, and then we quality review it. So that should bring down the amount of work that our staff needs to do. So we're going to up the number of things they had to do. So we had to put that into consideration. Okay, well, if you're going to be quality reviewing, allowed marks that came, then you're going to be able to do 10 of those instead of 5, because really you didn't have to do anything except for a check that the software properly put in the deadline and it rolled. So it's a constant moving thing. It's a constant check-in and a constant consideration. We can't be taking on these new software and using AI and all these great things and then saying, okay, but we're still going to do the same amount of work. That doesn't make sense. So we do have to reassess and check in with everyone. And maybe they'll say, well, I know we have this software now that does this. However, this other thing is happening. And I still have to take a screenshot and I have to do these other things. So it really only cut down a minute of my time. It didn't cut down 5 minutes of my time. So, I don't do those things myself. I'm aware of how they are done. So to get from the boots on the ground people, this is how long this task took before, this is how long it takes now. So we can readjust at this amount, but we can't readjust it we can't say, I've certainly attended these things, we don't have docketers anymore. And I'm like, I don't trust anyone who says that. So
Also, when they're not working in your favor and things like that happen, I think it causes the individual to not think outside of the box, because docketing is not clerical. Going back to the clerical thing that I was saying, you're not just pushing paper. You actually have to think about why a deadline is triggered, what caused that deadline to happen. Maybe think, go back a few steps and actually read what the agent might be telling you and why this is, so. And instead of just plugging in numbers and saying, oh, I have to touch these many emails, you actually really want to think about why this deadline is going into the docket and what the reason is. So sometimes KPIs can make you not think outside of the box. You actually have to really think about what you're doing.
Right. And, technically a notice of allowance should take X amount of time to docket, but say, there was a little glitch, like, I don't remember how, it was sometime last year where they issued notices of allowance like 2 days in a row, and then they were like, well, there's already one on here. And instead of just saying, well, okay, we'll put in this new date, to question it and say, well, this mark is already allowed. Why am I getting this now? And to bring it to the attention of the supervisor and say, hey, we got this yesterday. And again, if they were just sitting there like, well, I can't do this, I really only have 5 minutes to docket a notice of allowance, I guess I'm done with this. Instead to say, okay, I'm going to, for the moment, throw aside the KPI and say, here's my greater value. I'm not going to put an incorrect deadline in, because what happened with the USPTO is they said the second day those were issued are incorrect and the original date stood. So if they had just said, oh, I'm going to take that next day, then all of those would have been off by a day.
Yikes. That's scary.
Yes, a lot of scary things happened at the USPTO last year, and thankfully, and I told the docketers each time, that's your value add. That's why when I attend these vendor things where they say you can get rid of your docketing department, I say no. Yes, eventually, sure, there might be fewer people. Even now we have fewer people than we did when I started at the firm 20 years ago. However, there's still a value in a person saying this doesn't make sense. A computer's always going to say, okay, well, I guess the notice of allowance date is 4/22 instead of 4/21.
Yeah. Wow. So docketers out there, question, and you are valued very much. Katie, how about you?
So I haven't personally seen any KPI where it went wrong, but I think it's really important. And there's two. I think that the context of the KPI, you really want to make sure that there isn't any additional consideration that you're missing. So say, for example, you want to have your filing success rate, but as we learned in 2020 and 2021, I think it's getting better now, but the USPTO had a delay in processing the application. So it went from, you know, being able to get the application examined in 3 months, it was sometimes 9 months to almost a year we were experiencing. So an external factor may cause some anomalies in your KPIs. So if you wanted to have, okay, we're going to get all these applications filed and registered within a certain period of time, if that was the time that you set that goal, then this big external factor is going to affect it. So I think being able to step back and readjust that KPI based on if there is any additional context or considerations, you can, and that's the magic of having a flexible KPI. You want to be able to adjust it when you do notice these other things. So I think that's a really a good point to make when you are revisiting, when you're looking at it, is, are we capturing the data that we want to? And is there anything skewing the data? Is there anything that we need to look at? I mean, and for the example with the Chicago Cubs, they, their goal was to win the pennant race, and maybe one team, they just outplayed them, but it wasn't, they were meeting their KPIs, like they were meeting, each person on that team was getting their RBI was good. They were getting hits. They were doing this. But for whatever reason, the other team was just better. So I think an external, and just making sure that there's, like I said, that you've considered most things and any external factors that could affect your data and what you're measuring.
Yeah, absolutely. And this might be a little hard to answer, but do you reactively adjust your KPIs or proactively?
I think one of the things, if you set the meeting cadence, when you have your meetings, then at that point, I think it's probably when you realize this needs to be readjusted.
Right, because how could you know ahead of time, So that's interesting.
And
Very cool.
And a lot of the data points are time-based, so you need time to pass before you look at those metrics. So
because if they're already in place in a proper way, you wouldn't have to be reactive, and you would just have to adjust accordingly based on, the data you receive. Very cool. So for TMAs themselves, not just the organization, how can KPIs actually help you advocate for your role on your team? Katie, we'll go with you first.
So the KPIs, the data point, it gives you evidence of your value. It gives you evidence, data points that you can mention. Is instead of just saying, I'm a fabulous TMA, you can say, this is why I'm a fabulous TMA. Every TMA is fabulous, by the way, but you can say, I am fabulous because of this, this, and this. And I think in this environment where we are now, I think having the data to back up the statements helps people understand your impact. It helps people understand your value. And I think it gives you a way of, it's a concrete amount. You're not just saying, I am a fabulous TMA. I file in, 20 different countries. Everything is great on my team. This actually shows how great your team is. Okay, we did this, we accomplished this. And I think by showing that, you're showing your value and the impact that you're bringing to the team.
100%.
No one should be afraid of KPIs. They are truly going to be your friend. We do love all TMAs, and we know that they're all very hardworking. So regardless of your role from bottom to top, you're going to have a value, whether you're in-house or at a firm. So you can show that in different ways. And you should also, when you're talking with your colleagues at these events that we've talked about are so important to have, find out if you hear someone say, oh God, I never do TTAB, and then think to yourself, when I do my review, I'm going to mention I have, although I'm primary prosecution, I have this many TTAB on my plate. You know, think about the ways you are different. Oh, I never work with that attorney. Think, do I work with a variety of attorneys? Whereas that person only works with, has 2 attorneys, that main partners they work for, which there's nothing wrong with that. That might be, but just kind of think of different ways that you can differentiate yourself. And I certainly see it when we do a self-evaluation, and then you read it first, and then you do the evaluation of the paralegals. And so a lot of them do put in these key points. I worked with 14 different attorneys at this firm, and they're all happy with my work. I have this many cases. So they always love to throw in this many cases. That's why as a manager, you need to think about, well, what does that mean? If you're in-house, when we were at the conference, someone in-house mentioned a great metric, which was, I filed this many responses. We use outside counsel, but I said, you know what, I can handle these. And so they took a quantitative, and that leads to money, of we didn't have to have our outside counsel do these. I did these filings. And I think that that's a great metric for someone who's in-house. I used to be in-house, and that was one of the things I did, as I actually took from the firm. I did all of the disputes. I said, well, I took from them the disputes, and you don't have to pay for that anymore. So we might not know the dollar value of it, but we can certainly take these various things. There's the hard, cold numbers, but there can also be the other things, such as I kept this many attorneys happy, or I helped out this many people when they went on leave, or whatever. So throw in all those kind of things and put them in your annual reviews or your quarterly reviews whenever they come up. It will only help you, because we all know that we're all very busy as TMAs.
KPIs are your friend.
Yes.
Okay. And if someone is listening to this and thinking, I don't have KPIs and I'm not even sure where to begin, what's one practical first step they could take? Kristen.
I think the most important thing is to consider, what is the problem I'm solving? So I think that's the starting point for all of it. So is the problem, firm says no more overtime? Is it we have too much overhead? Is it you don't work with enough people? Whatever it is, figure out what either a criticism or a problem, and then turn that into your KPI. Well, I didn't work with 5 different people because I was working on this TTAB that turned into a full litigation. And so I got swooped up in that. And so I had to hand off my prosecution. So think about the thing that you know is going to help either your organization or your firm, and look at it. What is the problem, and how am I helping? How can I show that I'm helping solve it?
So perhaps justification.
Yes.
Tracking, clarification, accountability, all those good things. Katie, how about you?
So I think the first step would be when you're setting a goal. Like Kristen mentioned, are you either solving a problem, or are you saying, I want to really visualize my success and how successful I'm being, and how many office actions, we're resolving without it turning into a final. As a TMA, you have the data at your fingertips. You have the volume at your fingertips. You have the success rate at your fingertips. So I think people think, oh, it's the getting the data is hard, but it's really not. And it's just getting the data and really compiling it and making sense of the data. And that's one of the things I love. And I think that that's one of the things that I was attracted to using KPIs, because I am so data driven. And we do have it as a TMA. If your attorney or if your manager says, hey, how many applications did we file in Vietnam this year? You're able to go into that docketing system and get that data. Okay, of those, how many did we receive a rejection? Okay, of those, how many rejections did we come out successfully? So you have those data points, and that's a perfect metric that you can show. Hey, in Vietnam, we filed these many applications. This was how many were objected to, and then we actually were able to overcome those objections. So we have the data. It's in your docketing system. It's in your portfolio system. It's in your legal tracker, whatever finance software you're using. If you wanted to get, we mentioned before, if we're not a revenue bringing in department, we are kind of a cost center, but you can say, okay, you can connect to your Serengeti, database and say, of these trademarks, this is the amount of spend that we made. And the example that Kristen said with doing something in-house instead of sending it out-house. You have that data. You can see, okay, how much did we spend on this trademark? What were our PTO fees? What were our outside counsel fees? And then you can say, okay, this is what we were expecting to pay. And since I did it, I saved the company that money. So I think people don't realize that the data is right there. And I think you have it. It's at your access. You don't need to go through a firewall to get that data. You have it. And I think just being able to visualize it for your manager, for your attorney, that's really the starting point. You have the data, and it's just really, okay, what goal, what are you trying to portray?
Yeah, and as TMAs, we are, walking and talking KPIs with our regular everyday prosecution, the way we handle all the work that comes out of our inboxes and how we're handling our clients' portfolios and brand management. So today's conversation really showed that KPIs aren't one size fits all, and they're definitely not perfect. But when they're used thoughtfully, they can help teams better understand their work, communicate their value, and make more informed decisions. And for TMAs, they can also be a powerful tool, not just for tracking performance, but for advocating for your role, your impact, and your growth within an organization. Katie and Kristen, any final thoughts you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Katie's right that our data is at our fingertips, but if you feel like it's not at your fingertips, then you should talk with other, paralegals and say, hey, how did you get that data? Or maybe talk to one of your managers, cozy up to them at a happy hour or whatever and say, hey, would it be possible for you to run a report showing this, that, the other? So don't be shy about advocating for yourself. The data is definitely there and your organization has it.
And I think that KPIs will help our TMAs in a law firm environment or in a company environment. And I think it's the expectation that is on the TMAs. I think KPIs can help really run your practice like a business. And I think when Kristen and I were first talking about KPIs, last year when we were in Chicago, it really helps you run your practice like a business. And you're learning the vernacular, you're learning, the different business models. And I think and KPIs are your friends, and I think they really are for you to benefit from and to showcase your abilities, your successes, and your failures. If that's what the data shows, then that's what it is. But they're so beneficial to use, and I think I'm a big fan.
At the TMA Talk Show, we like to highlight a trademark administrator or someone in the TMA community who has inspired our guests. This episode at Minspiration is Mr. Michael Bradley, nominated by Kristen. 2026 marks the 30th year for Michael in the international trademark arena. He is a trademark senior paralegal specialist with Arent Fox Schiff in Washington, D.C. Michael has worked closely with INTA's TMA committee and was instrumental in creating the Sign Me Up campaign, urging lawyers to be aware that a member of INTA, their trademark paralegals or administrators, are entitled to their own profile on INTA's website and access to all of the beneficial reference materials within. In recent years, Michael served as co-chair of the TMA Development Subcommittee, where he focused on mental health and wellness issues and assisted with the development of INTA's mentoring program. Michael was voted the first TMA of the year by his colleagues within the TMA committee. Michael continues to support the hard work of the TMA committee and promotes the role and benefits of non-attorney trademark practitioners worldwide. Congratulations, Michael. Brand immersion, the comprehensive process of fully integrating a customer's identity, values, and story into every customer touchpoint, and making sure brand is experienced consistently and deeply. Trademark administrators protect and standardize the elements that make immersive brand experiences possible. Without that structure, even the best branding strategies becomes fragmented. Join us next time for All Brands on Deck. We are bringing back a dear friend of the podcast to chat about onboarding licensed brands and also how to partner with and train your branding teams. It's going to be a great chat, and you don't want to miss it. The TMA Talk Show is a production of Alt Legal and the Trademark Administrators Exchange. And before we go, a big thanks to our amazing team. Content producer, Tracy Cook. Chief Editor, Jernez Owens. Editorial producer, Bree Van Thiel. Social media manager, Sam Hands. And original music by Sunny St. John. This was made by TMAs for TMAs. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and always keep transforming your tomorrow.